What's up guys, my name's Brandon and I spent more than $32,000 on Apple products in 2024. That's the most I've ever spent in 1 year. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you what products I bought, which ones I returned or sold, and just my overall re-review of all the Apple products released this year. And at the end, I'll break down my top 5 Apple products of 2024. And I have a feeling that you're not gonna be able to guess my number 2 and my number 1 spots in my top 5. And while you're at it, leave a comment down below with your top 5 products of the year from Apple, and let's get into it. Okay, so we're gonna start with the first Apple product of the year, and it's by far the most controversial product that Apple has released in a very long time, and that is the Apple Vision Pro. And man, I'll never forget my first time using the Vision Pro. It was one of those rare moments where you feel like you're stepping into the future. It just felt magical. You only get those feelings every so often, and I actually felt that right away when using the Vision Pro. I think most people probably felt that feeling. However, once I got bored of the small amount of apps in the App Store and I watched all of the cool 3D videos, I got bored of the Vision Pro and it started collecting dust pretty quickly. And I tried hooking it up to my Mac and working on the Vision Pro, but it didn't really offer any benefits because the screen size was pretty much the same as my studio display. So again, I wasn't more productive. So again, it sat collecting dust. But then Vision OS 2 was released, and this included a lot of big, much needed software features, including the biggest one of all, and that is ultra wide mode for the Mac virtual display. This has been an absolute game changer when it comes to working on the Apple Vision Pro. To this day, that is the number one reason that I pick up the Apple Vision Pro. The reason I charge it up and use it on a weekly basis is when I want to lock in and, edit videos with a big widescreen timeline. Like, that's the main use case for me with the Vision Pro. Now, I don't want to discount the immersive experiences. Those are amazing that are in the Apple TV application. Even the Weeknd's music video was just phenomenal and something no other headset out there can even come close to doing. So those are all amazing. But again, the videos and things like that, they get really boring after time. But when you can actually work on it and be more productive, that's where I find the biggest use case for the Vision Pro, and that ultra wide mode has made the biggest difference for me. So that's why I ended up keeping my Apple Vision Pro 512 gigabyte model. And I will say that the biggest bottleneck, the biggest issue with the Vision Pro right now is the lack of applications. But again, it's just like the iPhone. When the iPhone first came out, there weren't a ton of applications. It took years for applications to be built out for that, product. So that's a big reason why I don't see the Vision Pro as a flop. Quite the opposite, actually. I think it's an impressive feat from Apple. It's way overkill. It's way ahead of its time. But, we'll see what happens in the next, 3 to 4 years or so. And then after the Apple Vision Pro launched in February, we saw the M3 MacBook Air get released in March. And the big deal with these was that they started with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So no more 8 gigs of RAM on the Mac. And Apple actually went back to the M2 MacBook Air and made those 16 gigs of RAM as the base model as well, which was amazing to see. I never thought we'd see the day where Macs actually start with 16 gigs of RAM, especially the MacBook Airs. And I have to say it, the M3 MacBook Air has been my number 1 most used laptop of 2024, hands down. Even after the M4 MacBook Pro came out, which we'll talk about that later, I still go back to the MacBook Air. It's just so light. There's no fan. The battery life is amazing. I can do some quick video editing if I need to. It's just so handy to travel with as well. It's just amazing. I love the MacBook Air. So I did buy the 13-inch and the 15-inch models, but I did decide to keep the 13-inch space black MacBook Air, and that is the base model. I'm not going to get anything more than a base model for a MacBook Air, and it's been nothing but great to me. And by the way, the M4 MacBook Air is coming out pretty soon as well. That's probably going to come in early 2025, and I will absolutely be upgrading to the M4 based on how much I've used the M3. And then 2 months later in May, we had our first Apple event of 2024 titled Let Loose. I streamed my live reaction to this event here on YouTube, and Apple announced multiple products at this event. First off was the M4 chip, which first appeared in the iPad Pro. So the M4 iPad Pro came in both 11-inch and 13-inch, which the 13-inch iPad Pro has been my daily, device. That's what I read all of my bullet points on for my videos. That's my go-to iPad for 2024. I've absolutely loved it, mainly because of the nano texture display. I am, a sucker for nano texture, especially on anything that goes outside. So nano texture, everything. I got the 1 terabyte terabyte M4 iPad Pro with nano texture. That's been my main iPad and I love it. I did also get the 11-inch model, but I did end up returning that because 13-inch is the way to go. And along with that M4 iPad Pro came two upgraded accessories. Number one was the Magic Keyboard. So the second generation Magic Keyboard, it came in both black and white, and this was a phenomenal upgrade. It sounds weird to say a keyboard, a Magic Keyboard got a phenomenal upgrade, but it really did. I mean, it has haptic feedback. It's made of aluminum now, so it feels so much higher quality than the previous version. It really just feels like you're using a MacBook when you use the Magic Keyboard with the iPad Pro. I guess the iPad Air as well, but specifically with the iPad Pro. So that is phenomenal. And then the Apple Pencil Pro also came out, and that was also a much bigger upgrade than I think most people, anticipated. So we got things like barrel roll, which is an amazing feature. We got haptic feedback built into the Apple Pencil Pro and Find My support built in. It's just awesome. I cannot imagine not using the Apple Pencil Pro at this point, especially if you use freeform a lot or you draw a lot in notes. And then also at this event, we saw the M2 iPad Air get announced. So this also came in two different sizes, 11-inch and 13-inch. And I did also get both of these models, and I decided to keep the 11-inch iPad Air. Since I had the 13-inch iPad Pro, I decided to keep the 11-inch for the iPad Air, and I got that in the blue color. But honestly, I have not used the M2 iPad Air one time since I unboxed it and since I made the videos on it. And that's because I have the M4 iPad Pro. I really only got the iPad Air just so I can have it to make future videos and comparisons on. But, with the iPad Pro, I don't need the iPad Air. But I think for the majority of people, the iPad Air is the way to go over the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro is just so overpowered. Most people will never need the power in the iPad Pro. I think the iPad Air is going to be sufficient enough for the majority of people. And then we had June, the second biggest month of the year for Apple aside from September, and that's because we have the annual Worldwide Developers Conference. However, after having the best WWDC of all time, arguably last year in 2023, the 2024 WWDC was pretty underwhelming, not only because we did not see any new hardware get announced, but also because we saw the introduction of Apple Intelligence, and we saw that it wasn't going to be released until after the future iPhone 16 was released. So that was pretty underwhelming for a few reasons, but that was a big event that happened in June. But the next month in July, Apple did release a new product that you almost certainly forgot about, and that is a new HomePod Mini in the midnight color. And this midnight HomePod Mini is pretty much identical. I think it actually is identical to the space gray HomePod Mini that has existed for years. So this was a very confusing release from Apple. I guess they just wanted to be more cohesive with their lineup and just have midnight everything instead of having space gray still on the HomePod Mini, since they're currently selling that still. So they probably just wanted to make everything the same, make it cohesive with midnight. So if you got one, I did. I compared it in person to the space gray, and they were literally identical. But there you go. That's a product you probably forgot came out in 2024. And then came September, which is Apple's biggest month of the year every single year, and that was no exception here in 2024 because we saw the big iPhone 16 Apple event, which this year it was titled It's Glowtime. And once again, I did stream this event, which I do every single year for every Apple event. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on those live reactions. But anyways, at this event, we did see the new iPhone 16s, which we'll talk about those in a moment, but let's talk about the other new products that got announced at this event. So how about the Apple Watch Series 10? That's what I am currently wearing right now. This has made me ditch my Apple Watch Ultra 2, which I never thought would be possible, but the Apple Watch Series 10 has been the biggest surprise for me of 2024, hands down. Because not only did the Series 10 come in 46 millimeters, but it's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever made. It's lightweight. It comes in a beautiful new jet black polished aluminum finish, and the bezels are smaller than ever. Like, this thing is 46 millimeters, but it looks larger than the 49 millimeter Apple Watch Ultra. And I made a whole video on the Apple Watch Series 10 versus the Apple Watch Ultra 2, and my thoughts in that video are still true to this day. I still use my Apple Watch Series 10 as my daily, everyday watch. It's just so much better for things like sleep tracking. It's so much lighter and just more comfortable on my wrist. So much better for workouts, again, because it's so much lighter and easier on my wrist, and just day-to-day use. It's just more comfortable on my wrist. And again, I'm not sacrificing the bigger display. The display is still plenty big for me. So it's awesome. I really only use the Apple Watch Ultra anymore when I'm gonna be like hiking, doing a really intense long workout, or if I'm just going somewhere where I'm not gonna have a charger for a few days, or if I'm traveling, I'll bring the Apple Watch Ultra 2 as well. And that leads me right into the next product that Apple announced in September, and that is the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in black titanium. So this is the same Apple Watch Series 2 that was announced in 2023, but just in a new color, and that is black titanium. And that is honestly my dream watch. Like when the first Apple Watch Ultra came out, all I ever wished for was a black Apple Watch Ultra. And that actually came here in 2024, and that still could not convince me to use it over the Apple Watch Series 10. That's how good the Series 10 is for me personally. So I did still end up keeping the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in black titanium. That is what I use now if I am, doing one of those things I mentioned earlier. So I'm still happy with the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in black, but I just love the Series 10. And then we saw the AirPods 4 get announced, and this was another massive upgrade that not a lot of people really gave credit to Apple for, because we got ANC, active noise cancellation, on AirPods without the silicone tips. That is impressive. So I did buy both the non-ANC and the ANC model, and I did keep both of those as well. And I love these things. Like this is also, I made a video on the AirPods Pro 2 versus the AirPods 4 with ANC, and I actually use the AirPods 4 over the AirPods Pro 2 the majority of time when I'm out in public, because these AirPods 4 are redesigned to fit in more people's ears. The sound quality is improved thanks to the internal design changes, and they have the H2 chip for features like voice isolation and lower latency. And plus, if you're deciding between the non-ANC and the ANC model, it's really a no-brainer to pay the extra $50 to get ANC, because you also get access to the other controls like transparency mode. And by the way, transparency mode also works better for me on the AirPods 4 compared to the AirPods Pro 2. And I think it's because we don't have those silicone tips in the ears. But yeah, AirPods 4, amazing. I think they're so worth the upgrade and so worth the price. And then came perhaps the most disappointing Apple product release of 2024, and that is the AirPods Max. These got an update, but the only update they got is a new USB-C port on the bottom instead of Lightning and new colors. That's it. We're talking about over $500 over-ear headphones that have not been, released since 2021 or 2020, whenever they came out. The first ones came out. The best that Apple could do is put a USB-C port and new colors. That's it. Now, I understand demand is not, through the roof like the regular AirPods, but come on, Apple. Like, we needed a new chip. We needed something new. So, I really was looking forward to upgrading my AirPods Max, because I've had them for so long and I need that USB-C port, but I really could not justify paying $500+ just to get a USB-C port. I wanted to do it so bad, but I could not justify it. I could not give my money to Apple for doing the bare minimum on these AirPods Max. So I was very disappointed, as you can tell, in the AirPods Max, and I really hope we see them get some justice in the next couple of years with a true second generation. And then came the star of the show, and that is the iPhone 16 series. So the iPhone 16s might be the best base model iPhones ever in the history of Apple, in my opinion. Like, not only because they have phenomenal color selection, like the ultramarine and teal and pink, those are all like amazing colors, but also because it's pretty much the Pro without the Pro features. Like, we have the camera control on the iPhone 16, we have the action button, we have Apple Intelligence support, we have the same 8 gigs of RAM, the camera quality, the main camera lens quality is pretty much the same as the Pros. We have all these features, the performance is pretty much the same, the battery life is pretty much the same as the Pro. All these things just come together to make an amazing value proposition, amazing value for the base model iPhone. So this year, I said this in a video as well, is the first year ever where I was able to go 2 weeks using the base model iPhone instead of the Pro and not, fully miss the Pro. So that's a rarity, and I was very impressed with the iPhone 16 this year. And as far as the iPhone 16 Plus goes, I feel like it wasn't as good of a value this year as the 15 Plus was last year, because last year, the 15 Plus was the battery king. It got better battery life than the 15 Pro Max, but that was not the case this year. The 16 Pro Max got better battery life, which meant that the 16 Plus was just an okay value. And then came the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, which came in new display sizes this year, which was very hard to get used to. So first off, we had 6.3 inches on the 16 Pro and a massive 6.9 inches on the Pro Max. And I talked about this in a video I made on the Pro versus Pro Max, but I actually ended up keeping, and I'm still currently using, the 16 Pro over the Pro Max as my main phone. So that was not the case in the previous few years. I think the iPhone 14 may have been the last time I was using the Pro over the Pro Max. I'm not sure on that, but it's pretty rare for me to use the Pro over the Pro Max because I usually like the bigger screen and the less weight with titanium. But this year I felt like the 6.9 inch Pro Max was just too big for me. Even though it had, even though it was made of titanium and it was lightweight, I still felt like the Pro was the sweet spot with that 6.3 inch display. And also we had thinner bezels on the Pro this year compared to last year's Pro models. So that also helped make the display feel even bigger than 6.3 inches. And the other reason I stuck with the Pro over the Pro Max is because it was pretty much the same as the Pro Max aside from the battery life. Like the cameras were the same, the software features were the same, pretty much everything was the same except for the size. So that also made my decision pretty easy to go with the Pro over the Pro Max. And I have to say, I've been loving the iPhone 16 Pro this year. The battery life is also better than the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro from the previous couple of years. I've been pretty impressed with it, and I do like the new, build quality as well with the, heat dissipation, the better heat dissipation. I feel like my battery health is staying at 100% for longer than in previous years. So ultimately, I did buy every single color of the iPhone 16 and the 16 Pros, and I ended up keeping one of each. Actually, I kept two of the Pro Maxes. So I kept one iPhone 16, I kept that in ultramarine, my favorite color. 16 Plus, I kept that in the pink color. The 16 Pro, I kept in the white titanium color. And then for the 16 Pro Max, I kept one in natural and one in desert titanium. And the reason I have two is because they're both going to be test devices, so I can compare one to another for different software versions like I do often here on the channel. And then came October 2024, where we all thought an Apple event was going to take place because that's what the rumors were saying, but Apple ended up releasing a lot of new products via press release in that final week of October. So first up was a refresh to the fan favorite iPad mini, and as somebody with an iPad mini 6, this was an easy upgrade for me because we saw massive improvements with the iPad mini 7, and I still feel like to this day it's not getting the love it deserves. People saw it as a small update, but I don't know what these people want in an update, but the iPad mini 7 got some phenomenal upgrades. Like it got double the storage, so it went from 64 to 128 starting. It got double the RAM, went from 4 to 8 gigs of RAM. It got Apple Intelligence support, which is a big deal, especially when it's a product that got its first, update since 2021. You're going to have more software supports in the future as well. So I just feel like for such a small amount of money, when you trade it in, it's just such a worthy upgrade to go from the iPad mini 6 to the iPad mini 7. I don't want to say it's a no-brainer because it's not necessarily a no-brainer, but for most people, it makes a lot of sense to spend the $200 to $300, after trade-in to get that new iPad mini. So I love my iPad mini. I did end up getting one and keeping it, and I actually use it from time to time here in the office. Oh, and how can I forget, it also fixed the jelly scrolling issue for some people. At least it changed the orientation of where the jelly scrolling is noticeable. Anyways, next up, we got the M4 iMac. So this, of course, got the M4 chip, no M4 Pro. So M4 chip, and we also got the nano texture display and updated I/O. So this was a relatively boring update. I feel like every year the iMac is a boring update every year that it actually gets an upgrade, so this year was no different. I mean, we did see nano texture, which I think is pretty awesome for the iMac. It wasn't worth it for me since I'm in a controlled, lighting environment. But if you're somebody who uses that in a well-lit area with a lot of natural light, nano texture does make sense. And of course, we did have, all the colors available for the base model, which was nice as well. Oh, and the webcam also got an upgrade for the iMac. So I think it's a great upgrade if you're somebody on an M1 iMac or an Intel iMac. I don't think it's worth it going from the previous generation, but if you have M1 or Intel iMac, I do think it's a nice, worthy upgrade. So I did get two different colors. I got the green and the silver, one base model, one mid-tier model, and I did end up keeping the base model silver iMac. And then we got one of the most exciting releases of the year with the M4 and M4 Pro Mac Mini. This thing got the biggest redesign we've seen on any Apple product in quite some time. This thing is tiny now. If you compare this to the Mac Mini I have right here behind me, This new Mac Mini is so much smaller. You can fit at least 2 of the new Mac Minis, the M4 Mac Minis, on the old M2 Mac Mini. So this was definitely one of my favorite products of the year. It's a significantly smaller form factor. It has the powerful M4 and M4 Pro chips. It has USB-C ports on the front. It has 16 gigs of starting RAM, and it has the same $600 starting price tag. I mean, what is not to love about the M4 Mac Mini? You really cannot name anything. I think the Mac Mini might have been the easiest generation over generation upgrade of 2024. So I think if you had an M2, it was a pretty easy decision to upgrade it to M4. So I did end up buying the M4 and the M4 Pro Mac Mini, so both the base models, and I actually decided to keep both. I don't really know why, but I decided to keep both the M4 Pro and the base M4 Mac Mini. I do think that next year you will see that get replaced with the M4 Mac Mini. The M4 is going to be a prop, and I will use the M4 Pro Mac Mini on occasion when I travel for long periods of time and just for other use cases. Maybe I'll have it in another office in the house, but I did want to keep it because it's such an amazing device. And then we got the M4, M4 Pro, and M4 Max MacBook Pro. So we got the trio here, and these were also phenomenal upgrades. I mean, especially the base M4 MacBook Pro, because if you remember last year when the M3 MacBook Pro came out, it got a ton of hate. Like, it all went viral. Everybody was mad at Apple for having 8 gigs of RAM on a Pro MacBook. But this year, Apple, rectified that, and they have 16 gigs of starting RAM on all Macs, including the MacBook Pro. And it was also controversial last year because Apple gave the new space black color only to the M3 Pro models, not the base M3. But this year, Apple also fixed that and allowed the base model M4 to get the space black color, which is the best MacBook color out there, in my opinion, way better than Midnight. So I did decide to get and keep both the M4 and the M4 Pro MacBook Pros, both the base models. I do think that the base M4 Pro MacBook Pro is the best performance bang for buck out there. However, that performance is probably more than most people ever need. So I think most people are going to be fine with the base M4 instead of the M4 Pro. Unless you really are going to keep this thing for like 10 years and you really care about Thunderbolt 5, there's really no reason to get M4 Pro, unless of course you're somebody who actually takes advantage of that power. But for most people, M4 is the way to go. Also, the M4 Max is an amazing machine. I mean, extremely powerful. I did get it and test it, but I did not end up keeping it because I just simply do not need all the power of the M4 Max, but still a great machine. So I ended up keeping the 14-inch space black M4 MacBook Pro with the nano texture display. So this did also come with nano texture, which I absolutely love, by the way. And then I kept the M4 Pro MacBook Pro without nano texture in the silver color. So I have one of each, and I just use the base model M4 the majority of the time. But if I need to travel and I need to do some work, I will be bringing the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. And by the way, I've said this before, but I will never go back to 16 inches. I just love the 14-inch form factor for the MacBook Pro specifically, especially when it comes to traveling and putting it on the tray on the airplanes or when I have it in my backpack. 14 inches is just so much better to deal with for me personally. So yes, I bought every Apple product that was released in 2024 aside from the AirPods Max. So with that being said, what are my top 5 favorite Apple products of 2024? And number 5 is going to have to be the iPhone 16. I really don't need to explain this again, but again, the colors, the Pro-like features with the camera control button and the action button, the fact that we have 8 gigs of RAM, Apple Intelligence, and a phenomenal 48 megapixel camera. There's just so much good going for the iPhone 16. And again, I think it's the first year in a while where I've recommended it strongly over the 16 Pro. My number 4 favorite Apple product of 2024 is the AirPods 4 with active noise cancellation. Again, phenomenal AirPods, the best upgrade year over year, generation over generation for the AirPods that we've seen yet. So I'm extremely happy with my AirPods 4 ANC. I use them on a daily basis. Number 3 is the Apple Watch Series 10. Again, extremely impressed with the Apple Watch Series 10. The new jet black color is amazing. The fact that the display looks so big on your wrist is amazing. It's so light. It's so fast. Everything about the Series 10 is 10 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Really no complaints at all with the Apple Watch Series 10, but for some reason it's still number 3 on my list. This is a great year for Apple, and that's because number 2 is going to be the M4 Mac Mini. I really wanted to put the M4 Mac Mini as number 1, but it's not really anything super new. Yes, it's a new design. Yes, it's fast with the M4 chip and things like that, but it's not a new design. But still, I have to give credit to the M4 Mac Mini. Phenomenal upgrade. One of the easiest generation over generation, upgrades that we've seen in quite some time for any Mac at this rate. But that leads me to my number 1 favorite Apple product of 2024, and you can probably guess it. It is the Apple Vision Pro. Now, this might be controversial, but I want you to think about it for a second. I'm not saying that it's the most successful Apple product. I'm not saying that it's the most used Apple product. I'm saying it's the number 1 favorite Apple product because it's the only Apple product released in 2024 that's A, brand new, B, that gave me a general, wow. It made me, actually gasp when I used it for the first time. No other Apple product has done that in a very long time. And number 3, because it's really the future of, Apple hardware at this point. Like whether it's the Apple Vision Pro, whether it's the Apple Vision, whether it's the glasses in the future, like Apple clearly is, moving towards this AR spatial computing, realm. And the fact that we saw the Apple Vision Pro this year in 2024 is iconic. It's something we'll look back on in 10 years and say, wow, like that's amazing to see where it started from. But hey, that's just my opinion. You might have a completely opposite opinion, and that's what opinions are here for. So if you have any, thoughts against me, or if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. So there you have it. That is a recap of my 2024 when it comes to Apple products. I hope you guys enjoy this little, recap roundup video. If you did, let me know in a comment down below, and let me know with a thumbs up on this video as well. And also leave a comment down below with your top 5 Apple products of 2024. Even if you didn't buy them, just let me know what your favorites of 2024 were. And anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and I'm looking forward to a great 2025 with you guys. I'll see you soon.